by two brother McToad.
You must remember those words.
Gordon's alive.
You know what the Turing test is?
I know Kung Fu.
Dead or alive, you are coming with me.
What do you want to do?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Stories Out of Time and Space. I'm your regular host, Scott Weatherly, and as always, I'm joined by Julian Darius. Julian, how are you doing? You okay?
I'm doing fine. I am overjoyed and optimistic after seeing Children of Men about humanity's future.
Yeah, unfortunately, being British and watching this film, I felt it was more about Britain's present, to be perfectly honest. It felt very... I hadn't watched this film for at least probably over 5 years, and it felt incredibly kind of prescient. So we'll get into it.
Yeah, I feel the same way.
Yeah, it was kind of like, oh shit. Yes, we're going to be talking about Children of Men. In 2027, a chaotic world in which women have somehow become infertile, a former activist agrees to help transport a miraculously pregnant woman to a sanctuary at sea. Starring Julianne Moore, Clive Owen, Chiwetel Ejiofor, Michael Caine, Pam Ferris, and a bunch of other people as well, but they're the main ones. And I can't find her name. Where is she? Can't find the girl on here. That's ridiculous. Key, and that is the name of the character, but she doesn't appear to be on the cast.
Black
Anyway,
actresses don't get listed under the current regime.
yes, yeah. But anyway, what are your initial thoughts then on
Claire Hope Ashite?
There you go. Thank you.
Yeah.
I was looking at the listings and I couldn't find her.
Well, my initial thought is, I mean, I joked about being optimistic, but I do think this is an astoundingly optimistic vision. Because it suggests that what it would take to turn Britain into a full Niger Farage state would be nuclear exchange and the all humans being unable to reproduce. That would be what was required. Instead of say, just feeling like it. I'm not, that's what's required to get the current 30% of voters who voted for this future up to 50.
Yeah.
That actually seems remarkably optimistic, right? But yeah, I think that I'm not sure how good it is as a sci-fi movie. It is basically an action thriller with a ton of political sort of sci-fi overtones. I think it compares favorably to any sort of who's the guy in Oblivion, the guy in
Tom Cruise?
Yeah, it could, like Tom Cruise does sort of like action movies. This is better than Tom Cruise action movies. Clive Owen is amazing. I think this is gripping from start to finish. It just holds your attention. It's really just riveting. It touches on a lot of issues. I'm sure we'll get into all of them, but I am really impressed revisiting this.
Yeah, no, I think a huge credit. The cast are great. I do agree. I think the cast are really strong in this film. But I think a big credit goes to Alfonso Cuarón for his approach to this film and some of those long tracking shots that sort of there's the one at the beginning that it's sort of renowned for, which ends with the sort of the bombing of the cafe. But even like later, like repeatedly, there are some astoundingly sort of brilliant like long shots, like when they're in the car and they're being chased, and it's sort of like the camera's like moving within the car, or even at the very end when you sort of follow Clive Owen's Theo like up the stairs in that building along the corridor, and like all the people are being like the building's being like shot at and people are ducking and diving. The complexity of like orchestrating and choreographing all that, it's phenomenal. It's gripping. The story's gripping. I agree, but I also think the presentation of the story is like it's hard to look away from. It's such a fantastically well made film.
I agree. And I think
Mm.
all those shots that you mentioned are staggering.
Mm.
I mean, I watch them and I think, is staggeringly good? Is this as good as, I feel like and I don't think it really is. I mean, I don't think like it has all that much to say, or it has a whole lot to say, but none of it is really all that coherent. But that's not really a fair way to judge it, right? I mean, if you
Hmm.
think of it as really an action thriller with a lot of themes, it, those shots are just riveting, staggering. I mean, sometimes the camera will catch a glimpse of somebody's eye, and you're like, I'm shocked by this performance. I can't believe how good this is.
Mm. No, I agree. I think
Yes.
that yeah, it's solid throughout. There's very little because I mean the pace is well once it gets going, like this film has got a very fast pace. It's sort of as you said, it's a thriller. So there's very little time to sort of sit back and go like, oh, that's that's good or bad. You're just kind of in it, and then it's only I found at least in sort of like reflection on it, I'm like, oh wow, no, that shot was amazing. Like that, that was really well. How did they do that? Like, there's tracking shots or like other bits and pieces that are just really well done. Um, so yeah, no, it is. It's just it's a phenomenally well made film. Um, I agree though what you say. I think it tricks you into thinking it's deeper than it is. Because I come
Mm-hmm.
away going like, oh, this film's got so much to say. There's so much the politics in this, and then actually, like an hour or so later, I was sort of like, I think it's actually kind of confused in its politics and how it represents certain peoples. I'm like, okay, it still gives into stereotypes. And, there's a few things where I was like, okay, I feel like almost like this thing's talking out of both sides of its mouth a little bit about things. But I don't think it means to, if you know what I mean. So we'll get to that. But,
Yeah, I'm interested to get to that. I mean, I think that, but you're right that it does seem remarkably timely. You have
mm,
you learn about this flu that broke out. That's
yeah,
very coronavirus. Um, it seems to have been handled with an equal amount of political alacrity.
savviness. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, Right. And then, I mean, we do face, declining fertility. I mean, that's especially
Mm.
concern for the JD Vances of this world. I mean, this fear of immigrants that, uh, boy, that defines our countries right now
Oh,
is
yeah. Well,
right there
this film, I
throughout.
mean, this film solidifies this idea of like the replacement theory. You
Hmm.
know, countries that are below sort of like population replacement, usually for the indigenous people. It's the truth here. Like we are very much the I sort of recently saw, I think it was 2019 or something, maybe 2020, 21, something like recent year where the population increased in this country by over 600,000. However, the death rate was less. No, the death rate it was less than the birth rate. So if really
Hmm.
the population replacement was, birth rate was lower than death rate is what I'm saying. So like, the population
Hmm.
um replacement would have actually sent the population down. So actually it was around 800,000 immigrants that actually boosted the country's population. And so it's one of the few times in history like there's a notable increase in population spike, but it's caused by the influx of people into the country. And this
Right.
has
It's
been a
entirely accounted for by immigration.
oh yes, 100%. Like
Yeah.
it was, and this has obviously been quite a big talking point for people like Nigel Farage and others. And there is this fear of replacement, and this is what this film's got it in abundance, hasn't it? I mean, he walks through. I don't know, he's I think he's a journalist or something.
The sort of a bureaucrat for the
Yeah,
state. So, yeah.
but when he walks into his office, there's a sign there that says like jobs for Brits, and
Hmm.
continually you see like at the train station there are cages where they've caught um I'm going to put immigrants in inverted commas because it's basically anyone that's got a funny accent or doesn't look white. It's um yeah, no, this is very much, and it obviously culminates in the refugee camp at Bexhill. So this really made me feel slightly uncomfortable watching it this time, where I'm like, yeah, this was sort of 2020. Still, this is 2027. Got a couple. You got 3 years. Could still happen.
That's true. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I don't know who's watching this going like, "But that looks like a good idea." That looks like the kind of society we should have. And of course, over here, I think about the kids in cages policy, I mean, we really did have open cages like this. Now, we're Americans, right? So we understand the value of television. So we
Mm.
put them indoors. That's our great insight. We pretty much had exactly these conditions. We just put them indoors, and we gave them some heating pads and made them not look quite so bad.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Yeah. Well, what this like, again? One of the things that this film sort of highlighted to me as well, because being made by a Spanish director in Alfonso
Mhm.
Cuarón, but like this feels very British in that sense of like bureaucracy is in there. It's kind of shabby, and there's an angriness to everything. Like everything is shit, and we're bitter about it. Felt very much the sort of like the root of this. But one of the things I thought was interesting about this film is no one comes across well. No one has got their shit together. Like the only people I wanted to hang out with was Michael Caine. And I'm just like, he's the one I'm like,
Well,
yeah,
everybody wants to hang out with Michael Caine.
yeah,
I mean,
most
even when he
definitely.
plays a baddie,
Yeah,
even in like his Alfie performance or something, you still want to just hang out with him.
yeah.
I mean,
But like
yeah.
his Jasper, who's like, no, I've disconnected and we just sit here selling pot and like listening to music. And I was like, yeah, that sounds kind of cool. I'm down with that. Um, but you obviously it gets framed in this way of that the government is wrong. These things have happened. The infertility plague has sort of happened. No more babies. You've had like, you have like baby Diego, this sort of 18-year-old that is on the news because he's killed. So there's this kind of like, this cherishing of the young going on. Because you see a sign sort of last one alive on Earth, turn out the lights kind of thing. Um, and so the government's all set up throughout the first part of the film to be the baddies. They are, they've set this thing. Oh, look, they've sort of set this world up in this way and doing the whole immigration thing. There's jobs for Brits. It's all about this right wing government. And then, but then when you meet the fish, which is Julian Moore, Chiwetel Ejiofor, and all those guys, at first they're like, we're there for all the immigrants and this other stuff. But the more they get pressed on things, the more you realize, like, oh, you've got no idea how to do this shit either. Like, you're just like anarchists. Like, oh, you don't have a plan either. It's just
Mm.
it's one of those groups where you hear like what is it you want to achieve, and they've got like one goal. And you go, okay, so you've got this one goal: all immigrants should be made citizens of the UK. You go, cool. How does that address the poverty? How does that seem to address like this lack of employment? Like how are you going to address well, it's not what we bother with. Bother with one thing. And again, you sort of the single-mindedness of this group becomes a bit of a becomes an issue. And I think by the end of it, you realise that they're no better really than the government, because they are there they want to use the child, Key's
Hmm.
child, as this sort of standard bearer. And you're like, oh, yeah, you're kind of, you're throwing everybody under the bus in this film. No
Yeah.
groups are good, I think is what it sort of boils down to.
When I think the government doesn't seem entirely that bad. And what I mean by that is like one of the things that immediately makes an impression on you is like things look grubby, right?
Mm.
Things look dirty and like they're falling apart, but they're still newspapers. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
the level of technology, has not significantly increased. But I mean, the government is functioning. There are, taxis and, everything is pretty much outside of increased lawlessness, you know, and things being dirty. I mean, like the government is basically functional. And you see those signs, and all those signs kind of make you think that, yeah, there are some fascistic policies that have been put in place, but the government isn't some kind of bizarre thing that
Mm.
isn't doing its functional job, right? I mean, it's like a functional government that's run by Farage, I mean,
Mm.
and has some really crazy ideas. I don't know that that really makes sense in the sense that, like, you talk about, you know replacement theory and that idea. I mean, generally as birth rates decline, you would expect that, yeah, people would resort to greater immigration, not less. But whatever. I mean, I like what you're saying about the fishes that they do seem like, to me, they seem like it's not just that they have one issue, it's that they're not trying to replace the government, right? I mean, they're
Mm.
like the revolutionaries who are like, right, we're going to overthrow the government, and what's going to happen on the next day? Yeah, not really sure about that. We've got a lot of factions here. They seem very disorganized. I mean, the
Hmm.
government seems a lot more effective and organized than, you know, this backstabbing depiction of, the sort of like Cuban like revolutionaries.
Mm. No, that's a good point. That's that thing. It made me think of, um, is that almost like that hippie-ish revolution, isn't it? Sort of like peace and love is the answer. You go, cool. How does that, how does that help infrastructure and like keep hospitals running? Like you've not thought this through. Like you've got your one issue, and like you say, that's it. It's interesting that this came out 2006, a year after the release of V for Vendetta, um, which that's a film I think we will talk about one day. Has similar ideas. This idea of sort of like as if the fish is after V. This idea of overthrowing the government and going like, "Oh, cool. What's your answer then?" And going, "Oh, I don't have an answer. Anarchy. That's let everything burn down and we'll start again," sort of thing. Um, it is. It's kind of interesting. This I struggle with the idea of anarchy because then this film does present you with the notion of anarchy at the end of the film, and you're like, cool. That's clearly no better. Like this thing in the Bex Hill, this refugee camp that they're trying to get to, which is on the coast. It's part of um the southern coast or the southeast. But one of the things that's kind of interesting about this refugee camp, then this is where I think it talks out the side of its mouth, because I think this is important before we get to the journey and stuff. The way that it presents each of the groups in this film, and this is why I think the film is basically saying groups are bad. Because when they break in to the thing, you've met all the sort of the other group you meet are the police, or the sort of like they call them like the immigrant coppers. One of them says this password is call him a fascist pig, which again I thought was it's quite funny. Um, so that's another group. You don't want to mess with them. They're all corrupt and selling drugs. But when they get into Bexhill, and I know that this is a walled off city. It's very much kind of like Escape from New York. Like it's all walled off. It's it is what it is. But one of the things I thought that was interesting is instead of saying like, oh, we've brought these people together in this multicultural sort of confine of a place, and what they've done is they've made the best of it to prove that they are actually better than their captors. You know, they don't come in and find that this place is sort of like, torn up the roads and utilizing the dirt underneath to sort of farm or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
No, you have roving gangs killing each other in this place. It's turned into basically sort of like Bartertown would be better than this place. So Bartertown is
Yeah.
now my standard of post-apocalyptic trading. But this place is an absolute shithole. But when it really sort of shows me is when things go a little bit wrong, but they have, and I don't want to, I'm not going to put it to a religion, but they clearly show a Middle Eastern funeral.
Mm-hmm.
There's a body being carried through the
Oh
street, and
yeah.
it's accompanied by AK-47s being fired into the air, and I'm like, yeah, this is almost like caricature level stereotyping of certain groups of people. There's like wailing going on and all this other stuff, and I'm like, I feel a little bit like this here, this section when it all goes to pot at the end, kind of feeds into like there's this whole thing of we can't let these people in the country, and this is the GB News section where you go look, because this is what happens when they're left to their own devices. They turn Bexhill into Syria. Do you know what I mean? It really felt like I was
Mm-hmm.
going, yeah, you want to be liberal, but you've also kind of fed into this narrative of angry immigrants destroying the place they're giving. Do you know what I mean? So that felt kind
Yeah.
of awkward.
Yeah, and it's specific, a sort of like Islamic jihadi sort
Mm-hmm.
of strain has taken over Brexhill. Um, yeah, so yeah, I had similar thoughts about that. I sort of feel that it's trying to be fair. It's trying to say
Hmm.
like, um, look, I mean, this is 2006, right? I mean, this is, my country was busy, we were running black site prisons around the world and
Hmm.
torturing people, and um, you know, Bush didn't do himself any favors talking about crusade
Yeah.
and things like that. And so we were in Iraq and Afghanistan, and things were bad, and there was this clash of civilizations talk, and I think that some of that Islamic stuff feels dated, right?
Hmm.
I mean, it
Hmm.
feels like in that era you could kind of present some of that cliche and say, see, we're not pretending that they're a utopian, people, right, on the other side, but they don't deserve to be treated like this. So
Mm.
I think that's the attempt, but I think you're right that it sort of comes off like it's so extremely jihadi, right? It's so like a stereotype. I mean, it's like Gaza a
Yeah.
year ago before the Israeli reoccupation was a lot more organized than this, and it had a fanatical jihadi stupid terrorist government,
Hmm.
but the people were running hospitals and functioning, and it doesn't all look like Syria. And Syria, by the way, the cities on the coast look really nice.
Yeah.
They're you wouldn't know that 100 miles inland it looks like a post-apocalyptic wasteland.
No, and that's where I think, like, I do think this ending slips. I think it falls down in that I think it should have something like that, where it's sort of like, oh, within this chaos, there is this, like, because places like, I mean, Bexhill's, I believe, is a real place, but you get these small places, and there'll be like an offshoot, there'll be like like a small courtyard and surrounded by things, and you could have that literally where they're like, there's all this chaos, but actually, if you sneak through this courtyard, is this little multicultural society where they've managed to sort of like, they've got their little commune, and they've turned this into it. They're doing this little bit of farming, and they're doing this and doing that. Like, they've managed to turn this into not a paradise by any chance, but they've made it workable. Like, they're living in this way. But no, the ending is like squalor and you know struggle and strife, and it kind of not irks me, but it just, yeah, it just felt a little bit like, okay, that's not.
I guess that for me, and Curazon is Mexican, so he's got,
Ah,
like I can't escape my country's,
yeah.
treatment of the border and things like that here. Um, but I guess for me, the presentation of a group bringing a funeral through the streets and, firing guns, as long as that's not the majority of people, I can kind of live with it. It's where I'm actually more disturbed by in the building how, like, once they discover the baby, everybody lines the corridors and is praying,
Yeah.
and it's like, oh, here's the Messiah, sort of like this will this will help our cause. Everybody seems so interested in like their cause, and whether it's fighting back against I mean, all of these anti-government forces are focused on fighting it back against the government as opposed to helping this person or
Yeah.
helping anybody. None of them really talk about really helping people. But and so that sort of feels like maybe it's a little overly cynical. And that sort of presentation of not just like an armed military group, which I could kind of bracket, but just sort of like, oh yeah, this is a majority Muslim population. They're all fanatical and going to line the hallways and turn to Mecca and
Yeah. Well, that
like
that
I
that
mean it's like
was,
such a overdone.
but that was that. I totally agree. That's my other sort of point of this is, I think the point you make about like everyone has got their cause, I think is this point, the point I'm sort of trying to make about groups are bad.
Mm.
This film's like every time there's a group of people, they've got their own agenda and they're a problem. Like, there's no one that's going, I want to help you out. They're individuals. We come across individuals, mostly women, which is, there's that sort of maternal sort of like caring that like Pam Ferris is, the woman that sort of goes with them, the sort of hippie-ish woman that sort of helps them out to begin with. The gypsy woman, I'm trying to be careful, that sort of like the Romany woman that they come across in the refugee camp. Like they come across people individuals willing to help, but every time they come across a group, it's a problem. And I think that sort of is a really interesting point. But the other point is this thing of the cause. Is like, yeah, there's just mixed agendas, but it's never. And I think this is kind of one of the things. So what does it want to say? We say this about governments. We've said, you and I talk about this quite a bit off air, but what are the governments doing with its right wing, left wing, whatever. You can never kind of get away from the fact of like they'll say things like, we're here for the best thing for the people, and then they do something that sort of you go, yeah, not really. You kind of again speaking out both sides of your mouth, but but that ending to get to the point of you said where she, the child Key and the young baby are being walked out. There was one moment where she walks out and sort of like there's people coming out of the it's all we should highlight, and this is where it sort of again I felt a little uncomfortable. All people of color, all coming down the stairs, and there is this kind of like reaching out and ooh and ahhing, and it feels kind of um
It's one step removed from Temple of Doom, right? I mean,
well,
like,
that or like Terry Gilliam. I'm sort of like we're one step away from like or Monty Python. This is kind of almost parody at this point of like that you said like he's not the Messiah. He's just a naughty boy. This is kind of they're savages. They are they're I don't know. I'm trying to be careful, but like it's basically I'm not saying it does depict them in this way, but there's an
it's a
element.
religious thing, right? It's
Yeah,
like they're
exactly.
susceptible to
Yeah.
supernatural thinking, to right?
Well, it shows
They're a
again, but
primitive lot, is the
yeah,
kind of
I mean,
impression.
and it doesn't really change. I mean, they step out, and all the soldiers sort of like stop, and you see the first reaction of two of those is to kneel down and sort of cross themselves. So there is this religious sort of like association with it, and yeah, it's just. But then again, like, I like that sort of thing where they're like, oh, there's these two soldiers that are gunning innocent people down in a
Mhm.
refugee camp, and the first thing they do is cross themselves. Oh, you're Christian. Again, it's like, okay, it's kind of interesting, but
No, I mean, I do like that moment, right? Because I
mm,
mean, of course, that's the first thing you think is like, right. So you're revering this baby, but you're dressed in military gear, holding an
yeah,
AK-47, intent on killing people, and perfectly content to kill civilians in the process. Um,
it is funny. I was say
you know,
sorry. It is funny when they leave the building when Clive Owen and Theo and Key leave the building with the baby, and literally once they're clear, the fighting starts again. Like that was the bit I was like,
yeah.
that's almost Monty Python esque. That is like baby's clear, carry on, and then they sort of just start firing at each other again.
Well, and the use of civilian-filled landscapes, I mean, is really distressing to me.
Mm.
Obviously we're going through this with Gaza. I think that, I mean, let's not exonerate the US military. I mean, we have certainly, both in the American race riots in the 70s, where, people sprayed apartments with,
Mm.
AK-47 fire and stuff like that. The National Guard did. Obviously in Panama, we would like say, what? We think there's a terrorist fighter in one of these apartment complexes. Let's blow up the apartment complex. We did do shit like that. But I feel like these days we're, at least from what I see, it's not that that never happens, but I mean, we do seem to be, I mean, remarkably uh restrained in terms of holding fire. And in fact, I have a lot of pride in, US forces to be able to not fire
Mm.
on, terrorist places,
Mm.
even when, on a sniper location, for example, even when they're under fire, and to hold their cool when bullets are whizzing past their head. And I am really proud of the US military for doing that. And in fact, part of my worry about the rest of the world is that, like the Israeli military is not that well trained. Let's be
Hmm.
crystal clear. Um, so I kind of have, sort of mixed view about that of like, but it is appalling to see how casual both sides are about, killing the civilians.
Yeah.
Because
No.
those buildings are filled with civilians. I mean, they're
Yeah.
filled with families.
But this is the thing, isn't it? Like that when a cause is, it's like, what's the sort of the collateral damage you're willing to sort of allow, in sort of like um, because of your cause, and it kind of shows in this film. Again, going back to groups with a cause doesn't matter. Like, any sort of level of casualty is actually acceptable when you are on a mission or when you are a fanatic in that sense.
Well, I mean, that's what religion is, right?
Mm.
I mean, that's what fanaticism,
Yeah.
comes from, right? That's what, um, yeah, being a zealot, right?
Mm.
Uh, that's where this stuff comes from, right? You got to carry that small curved blade to perform assassinations in the streets like Jesus's followers did. Um, so, we're gonna get mail, but
No, no, yeah.
yeah,
But I think the fish, the
yeah.
Tutor Four and the others, they are zealots. I think that's kind of a part of this, isn't it? Like, they're presented at the beginning with having this cause. You're sort of like I like this. It does this thing of saying like, no, we're trying to help these immigrants. We're trying to sort of like address the balance of things. And then as you sort of realize that Julianne Moore's character was actually sort of holding them, she was sort of holding the balance, and without her,
Holding them
again,
together,
she was the one. Yeah, she was the one sort of holding everything together, and without her, it sort of falls apart, and they fall into this zealotry of having this baby as this linchpin to sort of what to be held as a sort of a standard bearer for what they're trying to achieve.
Yeah, if anything, I think that I'm less cynical than this movie is about groups. I mean, I this movie generates a lot of what's working just based on how much Clive Owen, without saying anything, puts the baby first
Mm.
and realizes that, I mean, he has a life of privilege before this movie starts. So I don't know how to feel about that as far as like the white savior, the white male of privilege. It's Batman who's our hero, right? We position that white male privilege as our hero, and they're going to realize that something else is more important. But despite the problems in that sort of depiction, I feel a lot of what I feel about this movie is Clive Owen, without saying anything, understanding that baby's health and survival has to come first. You're a parent. I'm a cat parent.
Mm.
Uh, you know, I understand this, but I also just instinctively, every instinct in my body as we're going through these long scenes of shots of violence, and I really feel immersed in that moment and in that space. Every instinct in my body is to understand that my life does not matter, and protecting that child is absolutely everything, right? That's the
Yes.
future of the humans. Um, you know, I don't, my death is absolutely irrelevant compared to keeping this child alive. And I feel that in my bones. And so I kind of feel like with this group presentation, like maybe I'm not as cynical, but I sort of feel like everybody thinks they're doing the right thing, right? Like the
Hmm.
government, it's not clear that it really would take the baby and then present it as a Brit's child, as the fish believe. Um, but it is true that they probably would take care of that baby, and the baby would be born under much more humane, civilized conditions. But I sort of feel like the fish and these other groups are so quick to be focused on how the baby would help their cause, and I sort of feel like everybody would be saying, no, what's best for that baby is to be with us. We're not going to take it away from its mother. We're not going to, do these crazy things to it. And we want that baby to grow up in, a society where it and its mother are respected, despite their nation of origin or whatever. And that's what's good for the baby. I think people rationalize and are, rightly or wrongly, they will make an argument for how no, this is really doing what's right for the baby,
Mm.
as opposed to being so quick to say, oh, we can use that. They just seem a little transparent in that for me.
Yeah, no, I agree. That sort of, again, it's almost like the turning especially for, like, Chiwetel Ejiofor's character Luke, is that like that when you sort of he heard through a window of like, this is what we're gonna do and this is and it's kind of like, oh, it's not subtle in that sort of thing of the machinations that are going to take place. One of the things that's interesting though is there is this idea of this sort of what's it called, the life group, or the basically this group of the survivors, these people that are looking
The
into
Human Project.
Human Project, thank you, um, and how they're looking to sort of save the world and look at these things. And that's who they're aiming to get. That's the whole quest of this film, is get Key and the baby to the Human Project. And they've got to get to the coast, and there's a boat waiting for them. Or there's a boat that will pick them up if they go to certain places. It's kind of a myth. It's kind of sort of like, may or may not exist. Even at the end of the film, there's a ship turns up. You're never entirely sure if it is the Human Project. But one of the things all I'm thinking is, from a pragmatic level, I'm going, okay, cool. You've got to protect the baby and you've got to protect Key, but you've also got to get them to a medical place to keep them safe. But also, you've got to do some tests on them both, because something has changed. What has changed? Is it replicatable? Can we sort of understand why? How do we sort of use this to save the human race? Or do we save the human race? Like, I don't know. There's never a consideration of saying, like, it's always about the baby, never about Key. Do you know what I mean? Like, yes,
Oh yeah.
and that's something I was kind of weirded out by. I was like, Key's important because she's pregnant. And when she has the baby, it's about the baby. And I'm still going, like, this woman's carried a baby to term, the first one in 18 years. Like, she's the important one. Like, the baby's a beautiful miracle, but like, Key's the important. Like, Key needs to be like, right, we need to understand. I'm not saying, like, I don't want to condemn her to like a battery of tests and stuff, but like, it kind of sort of like, I don't
No,
know.
she needs a battery test. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, the reality, but I mean, that sounds objectifying, right? But I mean, I think that what we're trying to say is that the movie objectifies her, right? That she is treated as the non-white vessel that produces this miracle. And as you say, right, the miracle is her. The miracle is that she's able to have a child.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe that child can also have children, the girl that she has. In which case, like you say, possibly the human race could be spared. But also, she can presumably have additional children, right? Like,
Yes.
she is
Yeah.
herself a miracle.
It's not
And
one
so
and
that's
done,
an
is it?
excellent point. Right.
Yeah.
But I mean, our bias is so much toward, women as vessels, right? That the baby is what's important, that this movie doesn't seem to totally know that.
No, and I did. I got to the end and I was like, like, this is brilliant, like, fair play. Like, Keith had this baby, but they're so focused on the baby. I was like, no, we need to, redress that a little bit.
Well, a
But
good illustration of that is people are careful not to shoot, around either the pregnant mother or the baby. They need to be careful not to shoot around Key too,
yeah,
right? Because,
yeah.
I mean, and this is one problem that I have with that's associated with this is, because Clive Owen is so he is so worried about keeping the baby safe, and he's the one who suggests turning it over to the government and then changes his mind and decides to get it to the Human Project. But it seems that you were talking about the future. Look, we're talking about the future of humanity.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about species survival. We don't really know what caused this infertility. Presumably, it was a side effect of this flu. But we don't really know. We don't know if it will go away at some
Mm-hmm.
point. But we're talking about the survival of the planet. My rule is anything that, or not the planet, but
The human
humanity.
race.
Yeah. Whether it's asteroids or, comets or getting off planet. I mean, my rule is anything that affects the survival of the planet or the survival of humanity comes first, right? And so I'm fine with the fascist government of Britain getting that baby,
Yeah.
right? I mean, that's better than it being in a war zone, right? And getting, Key, right? I don't like that government. I will, as long as that's the line that we're fighting on, I will give my life to oppose that government. And let's be crystal clear. But if we're talking about the survival of the species, why do they not turn this baby over to the government? I mean, you look at the conditions under which it's born in and
Yeah,
how easily babies can die, and how easily he can die. I mean, giving birth is, under normal non-interventionist conditions, has
dangerous.
like a quarter to a half death rate for the
Mm.
mothers, right? I mean, this is one reason why the human population doesn't skyrocket. It's
Yeah,
because, you usually have about two, and if you're lucky, three babies before you die giving birth or in pregnancy, right? I mean, if intelligent design is true, God was not a very intelligent designer,
yeah.
okay? Um, so
I'm gonna make a pelvis this big and a baby's head this big.
but it's okay because we can walk on two legs now. So we're just gonna
Yeah.
squeeze that pelvis down and have our mortality rates from labor be 49%. That's enough. You know, yeah, it's whack
Yeah.
to think about this shit. But right, am I wrong to think
No,
like
no.
the fascism issues are nothing compared to the survival of the species?
Yeah. And this is where I think the film, again, sort of like the film wants to tell you, I think, that individuals are good. That's what the film's about. I mean, um, Clive Owen, I want to talk about Theo actually, but this is film is about individuals doing the right thing, or making the right choices despite groups. Constantly, it's about them making difficult choices or changing their ways, that redemption thing, and leaving the groups behind. And so, but you're right. There's this thing of going like, cool, but an individual, yeah, they can raise this child, but you're still condemning the human race to extinction. And actually, what you're actually condemning this child to, now that this is, what, 20 years younger than the next youngest person, you're kind of maybe condemning this baby to an incredibly lonely existence for into its dotage. So, you want to think about that. I'm not saying put it down. I'm just saying like, that you should be looking to go, okay, well, how do we make more? Like what's, you know, this is also, I know that's why they get to the human project, but it still feels a little bit like, oh, there's this vague potential group that can help us, or there's a bureaucracy that can help us or will sort of do things, but they're evil. So that's why we don't.
Yeah, I mean, there is a way in which this movie makes me more fascist, right? Like, and I love this movie. And don't get it wrong. I mean, I think this is a very good or excellent film. Um, I mean, and as you say, directed within an inch of his life, just
Mm.
an astounding masterpiece of cinematography. Again and again and again, riveting scenes. Not perfect movie, but staggering. But I mean, not only do I think, right, if the baby's health matters and Key's health matters, let's get her into a hospital. There's one option. We don't know that the human project even exists. We certainly don't know what their conditions are, in Calais or wherever they're
Mm.
based. Um, but also, like, I have this idea that you were talking about the revolutionary forces not really having being sort of a single issues. Um, and I have this core idea that I tend to stand with the bigger institution. Like the Roman, I am a Roman fundamentally. This is true. I mean, I think we're still in the Roman Empire, essentially. Um, and that is the history and the legacy that I subscribe to. And my fundamental thing is those systems can be reformed, right? Slavery was a problem in the Roman Empire. You can reform that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Admittedly, right? Brutality was a problem in the Roman Empire. You can reform that. What you can't do is when you tear that shit down, so you have no infrastructure and roads and government stretching you know, across Europe, uh, then you're back to 1,000 years of building it back up again. And when you tear down the civil infrastructure, like that's one of the real problems of these right wing movements in both of our countries. They want to dismantle things that take whether it's voting rights and things like this
Yeah,
that
yeah.
take decades, if not 100 years, to build. Um, and the thing is, we can reform messed up states and systems. I cannot imagine a non-state actor running sewage and police and schools and all of that from zero, that's going to take 100 years to build.
Hmm.
Uh, but that fascist government, as much as I hate it, and if that's the line that we're gonna fight about today, I'm on the side of dismantling the fascist government. But when we're talking about the survival of the species, right, let's give it to the fascist government
Yeah.
and start a reform project that says, look, that baby's not white. Maybe
Mm.
we need to have a future that embraces non-white people. Um,
Yeah. But I
all right.
mean, this
And
is no. You are. I mean, we've said this. One of the key examples of this we've always said is Star Wars, where
mhm,
like the
mhm.
the Rebel Alliance is like, oh, we're going to bring down the Empire, and you go, cool, yes, we're all for that. And literally, you get to the final film, and you're like, you see all the things fall, especially in the sort of special editions. And, they're there with a bunch of teddy bears, and you're going like, cool, who's turning up tomorrow to make sure that like the water's running and that like these outer planets are still getting their supplies
Yeah,
and
they're getting like grain shipments from other planets. Like they're gonna billions are gonna die of starvation.
oh
As
yeah,
you the next
there
day.
was there was absolute famine following the final Star Wars film. Yeah, no, it's these when they present these things on film, it never quite works because you just gotta go, well, the revolution, like, needs to have a plan because what happens day one after the revolution?
And I blame America for this, to be honest. I mean, like we love the 1776 revolutionaries. Storm that British ship, throw that to you that harbor, you
Yeah.
go, boy. We love that shit. And those people, there's never any depiction of what happens. I mean, Star Wars is quintessentially that American Revolution story. You know, I'm on the side of the structure. you know, um, and the
I
irony
like
is,
my luxuries and I wish to keep
well, and the irony is, if I could have a choice, I would live in the America today, not 1776. And the irony is, whether you're talking about Nuremberg or you're talking about the World Trade Organization, you're talking about global shipping routes, America is the guarantor and securer of all of these, if not the creator of these.
them. Hmm.
You know, these are good things. These are why I get to live in Hawaii and have stuff imported from around the
Yeah.
world. I'm with the international order. I want changes, but I'm with that international order. And the irony is that's what America's really good at today.
Mm.
But we keep selling the myth of the glorious revolutionary who puts, ideals above practical infrastructure.
Yeah. No, yeah. It is an interesting point. It, you don't I don't think you'd see enough of that government. I mean, you said like, Theo Clive Owen's character is a bureaucrat, but you only see a little bit of that. Like you don't see enough to really sort of get that glimpse of the government. Um, there are two things I wanted to talk about though in relation to this, because you do meet obviously Danny Houston's character, who sorts him out the travel documents and stuff, and he's the one. He has this sort of like he collects all this art and he does all these and he lives in this kind of walled off building. I'm not even entirely sure what he does. He's just called Nigel, and I'm not sure what he does. But I like the fact that even in this, there is this kind of at the end of everything, there's still this affluent kind of I don't say playboy, but there's this character that's sort of like, well, I'm going to collect art and I'm saving it and doing this stuff. But you're still kind of like, yeah, you're still part of this problem. But it's an interesting note that they're still the rich, the super rich, even.
Yeah, it's interesting. That character comes off as like a playboy, right? He
Yeah.
comes off as sort of like private. I guess that technically that I'm not sure where this is in the film, but apparently he runs the Ministry of Arts program, Arc of the Arts, that's sort of
Arc of
like,
the
you
Arts.
know,
That's what it was.
yeah,
Yeah.
apparently that's a governmental organization, and this is like the monuments men of World War II.
Mm.
Um, boy, that sequence is amazing. And I mean, I want more with the government. I want more with him. I want the
Yeah.
miniseries just starring Nigel with like Guernica in the background as you're having dinner, and that wonderful. I mean,
The
by the way,
statue
there
of
are a number
Michael.
of original Davids.
Yeah.
Like
I love the fact this one's
but
damaged and he's got like a metal leg, and they were like, that's all we could save. And you're like, what the what was happening in Italy then that this is what you got away with. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it does seem like there were multiple nuclear bombs. I love that whole sequence. I
Mm.
love the paintings in the background, and I love Clive Owen's Theo's comments about sort of like, right, there's not going to be a humanity to
Yeah.
appreciate any of this, you know. This is such a weird thing that we do. And yet I would do it. I mean,
Mm.
I totally support it. But yeah, the David with the sort of like replaced metal leg is a great touch.
Yeah. No, again, and this is what I'm saying. This, like you said, directed into its life, but it's kind of like everything's thought about. I like the fact that this feels. This is one of those things that we've said in other films, and I think this sort of overcomes it by being um, not too fantastical. That we watch like Gattaca, and we said it several times within Black Mirror. This thing of like, okay, well, here's the pivot from my science fiction dystopia, and you watch it, and you go, oh no, that's a terrible idea, that's awful. How does this society actually function though? Because this thing kind of disrupts everything, but you're still
Yes.
presenting a normal society. This one sort of manages to balance that, where it's sort of like, no, this place is shit and everything's gone to pot, but I can still understand why this still works and why people are still doing these things. Like it makes enough sense that you could step out of this London of this film and you could visit Manchester or Birmingham or like France and go like, oh, I can see this being replicated. I can see how this would mirror in other cities or like or urban environments. And so I like that I'm like, oh no, this feels real enough that I can sort of like understand how this works. Um,
Yeah, that's a
yeah,
very good point. And you're right that that's sort of like the Gattaca model is, sort of like, what if we had a normal society, but everybody was forced to, have blue skin when they turned
yeah,
20. It's like, right, well, that would touch everything.
yeah.
How did you get that passed? How do you implement this? Um, yeah, and those never seem to be thought about. This feels, much more like, um, it has that Mad Max style of detail in all of these
Hmm.
shots. I love like all those newspaper headlines. Like I just want to pause and rewind and just look at stuff in the background. Like I'm so fascinated by uh what's being presented to me, not just in that art sequence. But it does feel like a lived-in real place. It feels phenomenally realistic and doesn't strain credulity.
No, exactly. I mean, it's never going like, oh, 2027 flying cars, or oh, we've got head transplants now or something. Like it's not going to the extreme. So yeah, I appreciate that. I think the whole thing it feels lived in. I mean, we've talked about it again, like Star Wars or Outland that does that industrial kind of lived in. Everything's just dirty. And you're like, that's not lived in. That's just dirty.
Yeah.
This feels worn and kind of like still like recognizable as things.
Every
Which
environment feels that way. I mean, I
mm,
love those newspapers, when the fishes have him and they have him in that room that's lined with newspapers um and you're reading all those headlines, but all the newspapers look old and they're
yeah,
peeling and they look like they've been attached to that wall for 10 years. And you go into like buildings that are abandoned and all the tiles are warped, and I'm just thinking like, okay, I mean, presumably this was an abandoned structure that you were able to film in, because if it weren't, you would have to completely demolish the structure to
yeah,
get it to look like this. Like that, I mean, clearly there's mold on the ceilings, and it's that sense of like, it's not just dirty, but it has that sense of like, oh, I
decay.
see the passage of time and
Mm,
decay, right? That it's it it doesn't just look like, oh yeah, as you say, we've dirtied this up. It looks like, no, humans have lived here, done weird idiosyncratic things with the landscape, and that landscape has then continued to deteriorate
mm.
after those idiosyncratic things, which is really impressive.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I think that's one of the things. It is. It's really impressive. And I think it's a hook for this film. Is one of those things where you're like, this film just feels like a time machine. Like you feel like you're actually looking at a potential future in that way. Um,
To that point, even all of the cars look that way. Like one of the
Yes,
telltale things in movies is like, right, it's a dystopian future, everything's dirty. Right, but we're paying for those cars. They all look like brand new, cars. Not only are they dirty, but like they have, I mean, they really look lived in, the paint isn't perfect, it really is
do
masterful.
you know what? It actually addresses this film does two things that addresses two of my pet peeves about future environments and cars in particular. One is they get excited, so you never see two of the same cars in the same place. So it's like, we could do future cars, we could do all these different cars. It can look like this and this. And you go like, cool. If I walk out to here, three people have got the same Audi. Like, like people tend to buy the same cars in different colors. Like, that's what would happen in the future. So when I like the fact that in this, you see it several times. They're like, oh, people have got similar cars and, similar models and stuff. The other one is old cars still exist.
Mhm.
And then like so the fish is about to sort of like they've got like a Range Rover and they've got sort of like an old people carrier and sort of like, oh, it's 15, 20 years old, but of course it would still be about because that's what cars do. So I appreciated that like they didn't get to a farm with the fishes and they're like, we've got a 2024 model Range Rover. And I'm like, no, you haven't, because that's ridiculous. So yeah, no,
It,
things like that, it makes it feel you said that history, that passage of time exists in this world.
yeah, it's not all like Cybertrucks or spinners from Blade
Yeah,
Runner, right?
that's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I hate that when you watch a future and it's sort of like all of a sudden at some point everybody got rid of their old cars and now they're just like using new cars. It's winds
Well,
me
we're
up.
going through this now as we transition to electric vehicles. I mean, everybody knows you're still going to have those, gas guzzlers, those internal
Hmm.
combustion engines on the street for, 20, 40, 50 years,
Yeah,
alongside the EVs. Yeah, so we're going through that transition. But yet in movies, it's as if like in a certain year,
yeah.
all of the cars were replaced.
So yeah, so that I'm glad it does those things. It thinks about those things, and that's what I appreciate about this film. One of the things that I wanted to get your thoughts on is Theo, Clive Owen's character. Because he sort of I want to talk about Key a little bit as well, but I want to sort of talk about Theo because he's obviously the center of the film. Like he is the sort of the character that you're following. It's his sort of like he takes on that quest. He obviously has this sort of it's this redemptive arc that he has. He starts in a place of sort of malaise and he doesn't believe in the human project, thinks it's a nonsense. He works for the government as a bureaucrat, although he was um an activist
Revolutionary.
before. Yeah, sort of he was part of this sort of activist group before. Um, and it ends up with him literally sacrificing his life to get Key to her destination, to get her safe. And I had to think about this because I think I'm trapped in a thing where I'm like, not so much trapped, but like, I need it probably be to be don't need it. I like it to be a bit more like extreme. And it's sort of that thing of like he's not like broken enough at the start of the film is how I thought about it. Like he's downtrodden and he's like, but I think I'm so used to like the trope of like the alcoholic cop who's going to sort of make his way back. Do you know what I mean?
My last day on the job.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I'm 2 days away from retirement. That kind of thing. But like, but the Martin Riggs of Lethal Weapon,
Mhm.
like I'm going to put a bullet in my mouth and all this other stuff, like and then comes good at the end. I'm so used to those tropes, or even like the down heel Private Eye, the sort of Bruce Willis of Last Boy Scout and stuff. That he feels kind of normal. He's kind of given in, but not. He's not finding it at the bottom of a bottle or anything like that. It's so the arc feels more subtle, but the more I think about it, I like the fact it's more subtle because it feels again more realistic and more human. It's not like a big pivot of like I was a bastard and now I'm going to be a hero. Um, and it feels a lot more subtle. I think Clive Owen delivers that subtlety really well throughout the film. Of sort of like the more important this gets, as you sort of said, without thinking, without saying anything, he never sort of says, "I'm going to deliver you." There's no grand speech of I'm declaring my, you have my bow kind of thing. it just does it. It just becomes a moment where it's like that's what I've got to do. Um, and I kind of again, it feels more human for it to be in that mold.
Yeah, I have sort of a similar mixed view on this. I mean, I sort of I like Clive Owen.
Mm.
Uh, but I'm kind of irritated with myself that I like Clive Owen, if that makes sense.
I think I know
Like
what you mean.
like he is, I mean, obviously there are moments in this where, he is a fantastic actor and doing
Mm.
just staggering things with his eyes and his expressions that um are just dead on and so impressive. And you think it's cool. I mean, I don't know, but I mean, he certainly should have been nominated for an Oscar for this. Um, on the other hand, he doesn't have a lot of moments in movies where it's not that he doesn't emote, but where he doesn't have a lot of movies where he expresses his interiority and
Hmm.
expresses what he thinks, right? And vents about why, he's in the situation he's in, or whatever. And maybe that's to his credit that he's not somebody who wants to go for the big speech, which too many actors want to go for, right? I mean, they're big speeches, usually to their detriment. But yeah, but there is that lack of interiority. And so there's a lot that suggested we can piece together his arc. Obviously, he had a child with Julian, and the child died, and he is still messed up about it. And obviously they broke up, and he wound up, 15 years later working for, the government, and sort of just being very cynical. And we identify with him, I think, and his cynicism. And Clive Owen does a lot of cynical characters and does it
Mm.
really well. But there's never a moment where he says, right, Julian just died. And now I know that there's a baby and that somebody can have a child. There are things more important than my comfort now. He just kind of does it. And so the arc is there, it's implicit, but I do sort of feel like that turn isn't, I guess it's motivated by Julian's death, but I sort of feel like it should be more of a thing, or I don't completely understand it. And I think it's because of that lack of interiority that I think is there in Clive Owen performances. Like he never, like, Clive Owen is never going to do Dog Day Afternoon, right? He's not that kind
No.
of actor, right? He's not Pacino. He's a masterful actor, and I like watching him in thing after thing that he does. But he sort of chooses projects that are really interesting, and he's done a lot of really amazing movies. But they're movies that are kind of like superficial in one way or another, right? That
Mhm.
don't really feel like they dig deep into, the human experience or something. They're masterful projects, but they're not that kind of like, you know, rich, you know, I mean, Dog Day Afternoon kind of experience or something.
No, no, I know exactly what you mean. I mean, he's not. Um, he is an interesting actor, and I think he's one of those that he comes from TV originally. Like that was his. He started on British television and then sort of went from there. And it was mainly sort of like he was touted as Bond for the longest time. It was sort of like when um Pierce Brosnan sort of like stepped down, like Clive Owen was the he's the man, like he's going to be the Bond, and I could see him doing that. He is, he's got the sort of the at that point, 2005, he was, he's got the good looks. He's sort of, he's got the dark hair, and he's very, he's got that British hangdog sort of like almost lazy eyed, kind of not lazy eyed, you know what I mean? But like sort of suave, but like sleepy eyed kind of appeal. Um,
Sort of semi-flat affect.
yes,
Yeah.
you
That
know,
Bond
he,
has, and that, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
the best versions of Bond, like Sean Connery did that sort of thing where he'd be charming, but there's always that kind of like it always feels kind of superficial that the emotions and the put he's always a bit of a put on. Um,
Yeah, there's a brutality and a sort of like sociopathy that's sort of like right underneath the surface. And Clive
exactly.
Owen could do that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think he does that. I think he did films like Sin City and Inside Man, and you and I are both fans of like shoot 'em up. So he's done those actiony kind of things, and he can do that stuff and have that kind of appeal. But I think you're right. Like he has tried to do this, and I think he tries to be the every because he wants to be like the everyman in this. Like he's trying to be sort of like he doesn't want to be he's not an action star. It's kind of you got to feel he's vulnerable. Um, and so I think he tries to tone things down even more a little bit at times. Um, and so there are scenes when I'm like, I wish you would be a little bit more. The scene of Jasper, the Clive Michael Caine character, like he gets surrounded by the fish gang, and they shoot him in the hand and this other stuff, and sort of like he watches on, and you can sort of feel his pain, but it's almost too subtle. And when Pam Ferris turns to him, the nurse, and sort of says, "We got to go," he's like basically, I don't want to talk to you about this, but the anger sort of is it simmers rather than being like a gut punch when it should feel like he's just been punching the gut with what's just happened. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's that sort of like traditional masculine anger instead of expressing pain, right?
Yes.
And Clive Owen does that, and I think that's communicated. We understand that, but the movie that comes to mind as far as his performance here is Duplicity with Julia Roberts, and there he's playing a romantic character, but you never quite believe it.
Yeah.
Like, and that's a great movie, and that's a perfect example of like a masterfully done movie that kind of like has no soul. Like there's no real message. It's just all the twists and turns that you could possibly want. Fantastically shot, fantastically acted, fantastically written, and in the end, you're like, well, that was a delightful maze of a movie. But it sort of has no animating spirit. And I sort of feel that about his performances. Like even when he's in love with Julia Roberts, he's playing opposite Julia Roberts, and he seems kind of oddly stoic and restrained. And he does that sort of he belongs in a world like Sin City or James Bond a little more than he does in a romantic thriller. And so that nature, maybe it's just his nature or how he looks at acting, tends toward that restraint and
Yes.
tends toward that kind of masculine showing by not showing and not expressing directly your
Is
feelings.
this
And
is it
here
kind
it's
of
maybe a little overdone
yeah, I mean
or out of sync with the movie.
is it that kind of 50s or even before that kind of Cary Grant and Humphrey Bogart and that kind of um thing. Does that make sense? Is it that kind of performance that they would kind of give? Sort of like you've got that sort of crumpled matinee idol kind of thing, but it's kind of, I should say anger instead of um emoting.
Yeah, I mean, I think it wants to be, but I think, the funny thing is, I think it's like a misremembered version of what that was like, right?
Yeah.
Like we all remember those performances, and there was, there's this argument in acting and writing that like basically like all those moments in Star Trek 2 that we like when they're talking about aging and their
Hmm.
feelings, right? It's like people don't talk like that. Don't have characters talking about their feelings. Show it in other ways, right? And that's a generational thing, right? I mean, I
Mm.
talk about my feelings,
Yeah.
so I'm like, what are you talking about? But I think this is part of this sort of like remembered, like the men of the 50s and those matinee idols kind of thing. Except like Humphrey Bogart was soft.
Yeah.
I mean, he had a
And short.
yeah, but I mean, he was pleasant. He was
Mm.
nice to people. And sure, he could turn on a dime and, say the tough thing, but he wasn't mean when he said it. He wasn't curt when he said it. I mean, he was the kind of guy who would say like, "All right, you kids, get out of here. I'm going to protect you as a cop," but he'd do it with that charisma and naturalism and humanity where
Mm.
you knew there was uh a rich heart underneath that was being masked by the outer surface. With Clive Owen, you sort of feel like the outer surface is the thing,
Yeah.
and somewhere underneath there's probably a heart, but the focus is different.
Yeah, yeah. With Bogart in particular, it's kind of like the surface is almost like a gentle grumpiness, isn't it? Sort of like sort of a friendly curmudgeon, kind of sort of at times, but underneath, you know that that's a cover, and he will do the right thing. Yeah, you with Clive Owen, you're never entirely sure.
Yeah,
Even when he's been doing the nice thing, you're like, yeah, you're gonna, I always feel a little bit like you're gonna do. I was convinced, but it's that thing of I had to check. I double checked when I watched this film. I sort of went back because when he goes in and gets Key and the nurse, the Pam Ferris, and he says,
mhm.
"We've got to go. You've got to come with me. They're going to do this thing. You've got to come with me." And because he's heard them at the window and stuff. I had to double check because I was like, Is he right, or is he under threat and he's actually kidnapping Key to use as a human shield?" And I had to double check because I was so convinced that that's what this character might actually do because I'm watching Clive Owen, that I was like, is he playing? Is he a bastard? Is this what he's doing? Oh no, he's not. That's just me like projecting onto this character. So
But that's there in the film, and that's there in his
mm,
performance, right? I mean, I think if you it sort of is Humphrey Bogart, but it's like the sociopathy scale on the like Westworld dial. Like it with Bogart is like a 3 out of 10, and it's like a 6 out of 10 with Clive Owen.
yes.
So I'm with you. It's like, yeah, some of what he's saying there as they're trying to escape is clearly correct, but I'm not sure he heard all of that. I'm not sure all, yeah, so he's clearly willing to lie, right? That does
Mm,
seem in character. And so that would be a good example of where that performance or where his presentation kind of is a little at odds with what I think the movie wants us to feel.
yeah. He feels like, he's the kind of person I could have, I know he's got the wrong haircut, like, but he would make a good sort of aging Constantine, or like, like I can imagine being that sort of private Sam Spade. I mean, he played Sam
Well,
Spade
he played,
actually.
right?
Yeah. So I can imagine him being good at that in that kind of way. So it's kind of interesting to sort of see that he ended up playing it. Um, yeah, but I think he's great. I do think he's really good in this. He's endlessly watchable. I just want to talk about Key, and again, I'm going to find her name because I want to sort of laud her performance as well. I think she does a fantastic job. Um, and because I think she's genuinely funny as well. Um, Claire Hope Ashiti. She's really I think she's really good. Like, again, sort of, and the character of Key is very brave. Like, she strips down to sort of present her sort of pregnant belly and these other bits. But there's a moment when Theo is sort of pressing her on this whole thing and sort of says, do you know who the husband, do you know who the father is? And she sort of says, I'm a virgin. I've never had sex. And the look on his face, she's like, no, I'm joking. Like, um, but I thought that was, because they're in this miraculous moment, and like he's kind of almost willing to believe that, and she's like, no, 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 it's a joke. Like it could have been anybody. Like, there were men, kind of thing. But I think she does a really good job of being both vulnerable, but also she is brave, and she sort of she's willing, she knows that sort of to trust this guy, but also she has to make some of the tough choices along the way to be like, no, no, we've got to do this place, we've got to go to Bexhill, we've got to go do these other bits. So um I find her an interesting character as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it's a great performance. I'm kind of bothered by that line. I mean, I think that I mean, first of all, pregnancy without insemination can occur. It's,
Hmm.
very rare. But actually, like, I find myself thinking, like, oh, maybe that could be, the future, or like what's going on with like cloning and technologies like this. But that line, I guess one reason why it makes me a little uncomfortable is because I think the performance is very good, but that line of sort of like, oh, I've had so many men, but they've been jerks, and who cares, and who's remembering, sort of makes me feel like in the racial depictions of this film, right? Like,
Hmm.
especially with, depicting, Arabs or Muslim people as, and let's be clear, the majority of Muslims live in Africa, right? So let's not equate the two. But the depiction of Muslim Arabs as sort of, um, stereotypical, having funerals in the street, carrying AK-47s, you know, this is a white savior movie.
Hmm.
I mean, it is a excellent movie. It does a very good job of fighting that. Clive Owen is not a typical white savior in a lot of ways, but I mean, this is, you know, this is Dances with Wolves, right? This is
Mm.
the last samurai, just done really well, right? Um, you know, and I guess that dialogue kind of fits for me into kind of cliches about, black promiscuity and issues like that, just in that context of a white savior narrative kind of disturbs me ever so slightly.
Mm. No, I can
But
understand that.
but it's a
Yeah.
great acting job. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think she's really good. And I think her performances is really good as well. Um, but I like the fact, like you say, it's one of those performances again, because this is so natural, so real, it's sort of like, it tries to keep things very sort of like grounded and relatable. I find with her performance that um there would, nowadays, I don't want to be sort of, again, I gotta be careful, but nowadays there would be an inkling to make her much more authoritative, give her, oh, she's got to have all the agency, like she's got to do this, she's got to do that. And you're like, no, she's a pregnant woman, like she's going to be struggling with things. Like I think the balance between her and Theo works. Um, and again, their relationship, and one thing, like their relationship never feels um icky. If do you know what I mean? Like he's her protector, but it's never like he's not like, oh, but I shall become the dad of this baby. Do you know what I mean? It's never
Mm-hmm.
that. It's always like a caring sort of figure. And so when he helps her give birth to the baby, like, it's all done in a protective sort of, like, even he's like, oh fuck, I've got to do this. Like, it's kind of scary. And again, the humor's there. She's funny, she's witty because he sort of, she goes through the labor, she goes with things like, extended while they're on that bus and trying to get through Bexhill refugee camp. And then when she finally gives birth and he says, there you go, it wasn't that bad, was it? And she's like, you didn't, like you didn't have to give birth. Like,
Yeah,
and
it
they both,
wasn't that bad for you.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Like, and they laugh at each other and it's kind of like the tension is lifted. And I really like those characters. And I'm just like, yeah, no, I like your relationship. I love the fact that you guys are sort of leaning into each other and, you know, almost like saving each other and sort of like, this is where that's one of those moments in the film where I'm like, yeah, Theo's gonna give his life for this woman that he barely knows, or this child, but like without question. And he's not looking to be the hero. He's not looking to be, this isn't like one of those stories of like, oh, the mercenary that comes good or anything like that. This is just a guy doing kind of like the right thing. And I think that's a really kind of like, you said about this, we talked about, this thing of the problem of defining what it is to be masculine or what it is to be macho. I think part of it is this. This is a really good. I think
Mm-hmm.
you say it's a white savior movie, which is you're very right. But still, I think the character of Theo in this is just sort of like, yeah, I'm going to do the right thing, but I'm not going to be like, balls out about it. I'm not going to be the sort of like he's going to be vulnerable, but he's going to be protective. He's going to be strong, but he's going to be, admitting to sort of weaknesses and this other stuff. So I think it's a really interesting depiction of what it is actually to be like Clive Owen in this is a masculine character, but like isn't Arnie or like isn't trying to be like a Jason Statham kind of action character or anything like that.
Well, I also love that scene of, especially that exchange, that very
Mm.
human exchange of,
Yeah.
after giving birth. And I think that, by the way, if you're ever in that situation, make sure the woman is kneeling or standing, right? So gravity helps. Like, I don't know why we still give birth on our backs. Like, this does not
We,
make sense. But
Julian, we don't.
yeah, well, yes, well, I look, see, it wasn't that hard,
Yeah.
Um, I mean, and I think that line also partially redeems some of my discomfort with how she's in labor, and they managed to hide it, and it's sort of passed off like, oh no, this is incredibly painful and
Mm.
incredibly dangerous. Um, in fact, I was listening to a podcast where they had men hooked up to machines that give them period cramps,
Oof.
and all the men are like, "Oh hell no!" Like, you feel this every month, and she's like,
Yeah.
"Oh yeah, that's minor compared," and the women are just like, "Yeah, that's about what I feel. Maybe take it up one more notch," and the guys are just like, "What are you talking about?" Uh, and so I like that at least that line kind of like diffuses
Mm.
that discomfort in me as a member of the audience, that her pain is not being acknowledged to play onto him as the main character. But you're right. I love what you're saying about him and the white savior narrative. And the comparison that I think of is like, you were talking about Arnie, but think about Clint Eastwood movies, right? Think
Yes.
about like Gran Torino, which is like a white savior narrative where he also not super motivated, just kind of does the right thing, except everything is about how awesome that and
Yeah.
noble he is, right? Every shot is like, check out the white dude that we rely on. And here, there's nothing like that, right? There's not even a shot as he like it the way, even as he dies, it avoids that sentimentality. It avoids that heroic. I mean, Avatar is another white savior narrative that is
Mm.
filled with the loving, glorious shots of check out how noble and amazing the white dude is.
Yeah.
And
Well,
this movie avoids that so well.
we've said this, before about this idea of the introduction of the hero. We've touched on it a couple of times. We talk about it in Star Trek 2, does it, brilliantly, sort of like they've done the Kobayashi Maru test, and all of a sudden the door of the bridge opens, and there's this backlit Kirk, and you've got this sort of like this upshot of him sort of in like, this is super Kirk. And it's a great entrance, but it's very much a hero entrance. But they do sort of undercut it later on when he's got his reading glasses and he obviously talks about his age and stuff like that. So they do it, they keep a nice balance. And we've talked other films do it as well. Like even like the Mad Max films will do that thing of like the upward shot of like, here's the hero in some way. It makes them look a badass. This film doesn't do that. Like, in those long tracking shots and stuff, like, this is that everyman character. Like, Clive Owen is sort of like, the bomb goes off and he's scared and he drops his coffee and runs for his life, and things like that. The tracking shots are not up; they're just sort of they're on, and they're sort of it's medium shots that are being tracked around and stuff. Like, yeah, he's not. It's again, this trying to keep this grounded in a reality, or in a sort of a stability that isn't going to be too fantastical. Because again, if it was sort of they could do, they could have him marching into that corridor in the shot up, apartment building at the end of it, and just like bullets flying past him as he just walks down there to retrieve key. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Oh yeah.
that's what, certain other actors, that's what The Rock would
Everyone who's
do.
played Batman knows
Yeah,
that shot.
exactly. Like that's what Dwayne Johnson would do.
Oh my God.
They'd have him
Yeah.
marching down the corridor and sort of kicking the door in and then taking her out of there. Like but that's not this film, and I love the fact that that's not this film. And you know,
That's such a great point. And your point about not romanticizing, their relationship. Even though she's naked, I mean, we see her naked. There's nothing sexualized about it.
no,
And I love that you pointed that out. And I love that, like, what you're saying about, this isn't Bruce Willis, being macho here, right? I mean,
mm,
Clive Owen in those tracking shots, he stumbles, he
yeah,
looks scared, he looks like he's making it up as he goes along, as everyone would in that situation. Um, there's no heroic macho stuff going on. What's real macho, and this goes to, we have these discussions about toxic masculinity. If there's something worth preserving about that male culture, right? And I think you and I both want there to be. It is this protecting, right? It is, doing the right thing, and protecting people, and that's certainly a value that that I hold. But it shouldn't be about the reward, right? It shouldn't
Exactly.
be about you get the girl, you get everyone knows you're the hero and thanks you and worships you. And our society is filled with both of our societies with
Yeah.
men, especially white men, who do the minimal effort at protecting, if anything, and want all of the acclaim and award and want to be shot like the hero.
Exactly.
And this is a much closer to depiction. If you want a white savior narrative, this is closer to
It's a
good
much
one.
more healthier sort of version of it, but it's good, and I love it for that. Anyway, I think we're sort of running to its time. Any final thoughts though, really, for Children of Men?
I love Julianne Moore. I wish she didn't die so soon. She's
Yes.
another great actor. This movie is really filled with, so much that's good. I can't help but feel that I want it to be about more, and I want it to have, more of a depth to it. But from start to finish, it's spectacularly done, spectacularly well acted.
Mm. I think I agree. I mean, I think we're on the same page with this one. Like, I could rewatch this film, in not quick succession, but I will definitely come back to this film and go, oh yeah, no, I really like this film. But yeah, I wish it had more of a sort of a a gut punch about a couple of things. I wish it was a bit more sort of like biting about, the politics or society or something. But kind of feels like it's sort of, like I say, it talks out its mouth a little bit on both sides, but also pulls its punches. But still, beautifully produced, absolutely fantastically directed, and the performances are solid throughout. And so yeah, no, it's a joy to watch this film. It's high recommend. Anyway,
Yeah, agreed.
we shall move on from there because we're coming to the end of our little sojourn into the apocalypse. And we've got an absolute, joyride along the road next. Which, if you thought this film was grim and dirty, hold on. Like, basically, yeah. And it gets dark. But anyway, for now, if you like what we're doing, please leave a review on your podcast catcher or wherever you're listening to this. Go check out our Patreon, www.patreon.com/20CG Media. There's a link down below. We've got more apocalypse films going on over there in our little sort of side things. We've done Threads. We've done When the Wind Blows. We've done Six String Samurai. We've done Hell Comes to Frogtown. We've done a bunch of other things as well. So we've got loads of in there, as well as the Twilight Zone and a bunch of other things going on as well over on the Patreon. Lots of other bonus content. But for now, Julian, thank you very much for this discussion. It's been fantastic.
Oh, thank you.
And ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. And we shall see you on the next episode.
There's something very important I forgot to tell you.
What?
Don't cross the streams.